Hey guys, this is another archery related video. So I want to talk about how I strayed from the path of good archery. So when I was younger, I was on a couple of different archery teams. I was doing modern archery, and I went into longbow, and I was reasonably good at longbow as well. But one of the mistakes I made is that I went into heavy draw weights probably sooner than I was ready to for the time. So I'm not the strongest person in the world, but I got up to kind of 90-pound draw weight bows eventually in my 20s, and essentially it ruined my my shooting form. But specifically what it ruined was it got to a point where I was drawing and releasing without aiming at all. Now I know a lot of people talk about this as a really good thing because it's instinctive, man, it's instinctive archery. But the result for me is I didn't hit anything. My accuracy went absolutely to pot. So what I've got here is actually, this is a bow made of, it's hazel if I remember correctly, made by Will Sherman, and you know that I talk about Will Sherman quite a lot. I'm a bit of a fanboy of his work, both his bows and his arrows and his methodology. Now I know he watches this channel, and he likes all the innuendos, and we make lots of in-jokes when we see each other. But anyway, I really like the way he approaches this subject because it's a HEMA way of approaching subjects. That is, it's scientific and unbiased, and he looks at data. He doesn't speculate based on rubbish. You know, he actually comes at this like a scientist, and I absolutely love that. And he is an awesome guy and a really, really good craftsman. He makes really nice bows that actually look like medieval war bows, that are heavily based on the surviving war bows, of course, almost all of which are from the Mary Rose. And same for the arrows. He researches the original arrows and makes replicas of those. But back to me for a second. So what essentially went wrong for me was that I was using very heavy draw weight bows, so I was very much focused on drawing them, but I wasn't focused on shooting them and hitting things. So what I've got here is a bow that was actually made for Lucy, and I think it's in the 50s. I think it's a sort of somewhere between 50 and 60 pounds draw weight. Okay, and obviously that varies depending on your draw length. So at my draw length, it's probably I don't know, closer to 60. I do have a 70-pound draw weight bow from Will as well, which was made for me at more or less the same time, and that one only feels a bit heavier than this. So I think this is probably drawing close to 60 when I pull it back. But the reason that I have started using Lucy's bow and my lighter bows more is because I'm trying to get better again. I'm trying to go back and get form. So just to describe essentially where I messed up, I was so focused on getting that heavy bow drawn back that as soon as I got it back to here, I was snap releasing. Okay, so my knock's a little bit big for my string here, so I'm pinching the arrow a bit to keep it on because I didn't pick the right arrow for this, but there we go. So essentially I would psych myself up, I would slam the thing back, and as soon as I got anywhere near my cheek, I was releasing. And the problem was I wasn't focusing on where my arrow was pointing. Now, generally speaking, all the arrows were going in roughly the right direction. If I'd been doing volley fire or something, be quiet, pigeon, there's a pigeon up in the tree there. If I was doing volley fire, I'm not tempted, I'm not allowed to in this country. If I was doing volley shooting, fire, you know, if I was doing volley fire, that's the expression, but obviously there's no fire, it's a bow, it's not a firearm. But if I was doing volley shooting, or just, you know, shooting arrows for speed or something, it wouldn't matter. But when you're actually trying to hit a target, it's really quite important to be able to hit a target. Now, a lot of people have said about medieval war bows that accuracy doesn't matter, it's about pulling the heavy weights and volume shooting. The problem is history doesn't support you in that. So historical sources are full of pictures of people shooting at targets. So very clearly they were interested in being able to hit a target. If you've got one enemy on a wall or protecting a gate, you want to be able to shoot that enemy and hit them. And whether you hit them with a 100-pound draw weight bow or whether you hit them with a 180-pound draw weight bow, it's probably not going to make an awful lot of difference to most people who are either wearing clothes or light armour. Okay. the effect on the target is not, you get a law of diminishing returns with the power of bows. So if you're a good archer, if you're an accurate archer with a 100-pound draw weight war bow, and you're a shockingly inaccurate archer with a 180-pound draw weight bow, I would suggest maybe you want to practice more with the 100-pound bow than with the 180-pound bow. Obviously it's great to be able to pull higher draw weights, and I'm not going to detract from those people. I have got a huge level of respect, and I would love to be able to shoot 120, 140 pound draw weight bows, because then I would feel that I was shooting war bows comparable with what my ancestors, you know, people in the medieval period from England were probably shooting, which I can't. I'm not strong enough, or I don't practice often enough. I'm sure I could get there if I practiced enough, and maybe I'll give it a go. But you know, at the moment I can't. So for me, I want to be able to hit a target, and I can't hit a target with my 90-pound bow because I can't shoot accurately enough with it. But I can hit a target fairly easily with a 30-pound bow, and part of that is to do with the release. So as mentioned, what I tend to do with the heavy bows, and I'm not going to do it here because I'm not set up to shoot here right at the moment, although I will be in due course, is drawing back, and then as soon as I get here, immediately releasing. So what I'm practicing doing now is I'm counting, and I know this is, I haven't invented this, lots of people do this. I'm essentially drawing back with a lighter bow to here and going 1,000, 2,000, shoot. And in that time, and you could count to anything in theory, if you had a light enough bow, you could hold it there like in Lord of the Rings for like half a minute. That's ridiculous, by the way. But if you do this sort of, if you reduce your draw weight, draw up, get to a good anchor point. I know that some people don't like the idea of anchor points and they think you should just be doing it instinctively. But anyway, for me, what works is an anchor point about here, okay, on my side of my head, sort of between my cheek and my ear. So if I'm drawing back to here, and then I go 1,000, 2,000, in that time, although I'm not consciously thinking about, ooh, aim, 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 it gives me long enough that my body adjusts itself into the right direction to have the arrow go in the direction that I want it to, instead of getting to a point where I'm slamming back here and my arm isn't yet where it needs to be. Now, I do realise there are some people who are big advocates of this kind of snap shooting, bam, okay, and that has a lot of virtues. Being able to shoot quickly, obviously, is potentially a very, very useful skill. But to get to that point, you have to be doing a lot of things right, and I accept that I'm doing a lot of things wrong at the moment. So I'm going backwards, going back, and I think this applies to all sorts of HEMA. I regard this as a form of HEMA, by the way, but this applies to swordsmanship, or you know, to boxing or wrestling, or all sorts of things. If you're trying to run before you're ready to run, go back to walking and make sure you've got the walking correct. Okay, and it's certainly true in fencing, in swordsmanship, where a lot of people are, you know, they're trying to do Zwerchhaus, they're trying to do all the you know, let's say the Meisterhau within a Lichtenau context, but so let's say they're trying to do relatively difficult to achieve under pressure techniques when they haven't got basic things like their footwork or their distance or their tempo, their sense of tempo correct first. So sometimes you have to go back to basics, in other words. Okay, so that's what I'm attempting to do. So there we go, that's what I'm currently on. I'm currently using lighter bows, and I'm going back to coming up to, first of all, drawing a lot without shooting at all, just getting used to getting the bow back to my ear, and again, back to the ear, and just getting used to doing that. And then when I am shooting, coming up and going 1,000, 2,000, shoot. Okay, that's a bit hurty because I'm not using my glove at the moment, but usually I use a shooting glove, incidentally. I don't have hardcore fingers. So there we go, back to basics. And anybody who wants to take up archery, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of archery clubs around, or even if there isn't an archery club around, you can get some fairly cheap equipment these days. And if you can find the use of a large garden or some land, make sure you've got lots of safe space behind you, or you've got netting or wall or whatever. Obviously, safety first. But it is a great, great hobby. And for anyone interested in HEMA, you know, remember, we focus a lot on swords and hand weapons. weapons, but at the end of the day, in warfare of the time, things like bows and pikes and you know, siege engines were just as important, or possibly even more important, than things like swords were. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon for another video. Cheers, folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.